Hi, welcome back. This is Paul Mallory from the Thrive Tribe, and today's video is another book review. I'm doing a little series of book reviews because I wanted to share with you my thoughts about those books that have meant most to me and have been most life-changing for me, in the hope that you too might find something useful in them. This isn't sponsored in any sense, it's just books that I truly believe are really valuable. And I hope you find them to be the same. So today's book that I'd like to talk about is called Mindset. The subtitle is Changing the Way You Think to Fulfill Your Potential by Dr. Carol S. Dweck, spelled D-W-E-C-K, Dweck. And this is an amazing book and really had a massive impact on me when I first read it. It was written in 2006, so it's been around for a while now. Paperback version, as you can see, about 264 pages. So quite digestible, packed full of great stories, but really contains a profound insight that I think we need to talk about. I've talked on other videos, and the last one I did was on The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, about being in the moment, about the power of presence, which I totally believe is life-changing when you get it. And many of these spiritual traditions and books that I'm a great fan of focus quite heavily on being present, on calming the thinking, and on not being driven by our minds. And I'm completely on board with that concept. This book is a little bit more about, but when we do need to think, how will we use it? For me, thinking is a tool. It's one of the things we have to use. So we don't want to allow our minds to drive us and to own us and to cause us to feel bad. We do want to use our minds as a tool to help us get things done and to help us find ways to feel good. So there is a place for using the mind as a tool, for trying to get control of it a little bit and to use it better. Now, where this book, Mindset, is really profound, I think, is on the question of, are you and am I the way we are? And then we need to live our lives based on that. You know, a lot of what we hear in life and a lot of what we're told by our parents, our teachers, by society in general, tends to suggest that you are just the way you are, so deal with it. What Carol Dweck's book does, though, is quite empowering, because it points out we have a choice about the fundamental mindset we adopt, whether we adopt what she calls a fixed or a growth mindset. And the difference between those two mindsets is, am I just the way I am and I have to defend myself against the world? Or, the second option for a mindset, actually, can I change? And can I develop? And can I build on who I am and become different? And is my personality fixed? Or does it grow from the choice of mindset that I made? Now, where it's really empowering is she's suggesting, and suggesting, by the way, based on years of research as a psychologist. She's a professor of psychology at Stanford University. So it's not just opinion. Based on her research of dealing with patients and clients over the years, she's suggesting, and building on writers who came before her, such as Aaron Beck and so on, she's suggesting very strongly that the evidence shows that we have a choice as to which mindset we adopt, and that our personality will grow from that mindset. So this is very fundamental stuff. And when you get this, when you understand this concept, I think it's incredibly powerful. So that's why I chose this particular book. It's about our beliefs and our mindsets, and those profoundly affect our lives and how we live them. So this stuff really matters. So I, as a person, for example, I do training, coaching, I record online video courses, training courses for people. And I'm driven, I was thinking about this recently, considering my young grandson, who's 3 years old. I was watching him put together mechanically with a screwdriver, a plastic screwdriver, a toy screwdriver, but putting a truck together, and he's absolutely fascinated with the way things fit together, how do things work mechanically. He's completely fascinated by it. And I was just struck that I'm not fascinated by that at all. I have no interest in how things work. I especially don't want to know how my car works. I want to know that it does work. But what happens under the hood, under the bonnet, I leave to others who have interests like my grandson. What fascinates me and always has really is how do people work? What drives people? What motivates people? Why do they behave the way they do? Why do I behave the way I do? That's what motivates me. So I've always had this kind of burning curiosity about life, about people, about meaning. But then I notice not everybody has that same curiosity, and certainly not about the same things. Why are we different? Um, and how can people not be curious about the world and people? Um, some people, it seems to me, seem to think they've done the learning bit, they've been to university, they've got the certificates, and there's not too much more you can teach them, not too much more you can learn. Well, that puzzles me immensely because when I think about the universe and all the imponderables and all the questions that science has yet to answer about love and spirit and growth and where do we go next and is reincarnation true and all these interesting questions, how can you not be curious about this stuff? And I guess some people say, well, the things that you can never find the answer to, why should I be curious? But I do find it odd that some people seem to think they've learned everything, they know it all, and they have nothing left to learn. So then that got me thinking about, so are people just different types of people? Are some people born curious and other people born less curious or curious in different things? And certainly we obviously have different personalities. But it got me thinking about, is it a skill, actually, being curious? Is it a skill wanting to learn? Is it something we have to develop? And Carol Dweck's book argues it's a choice. She goes on to argue which is the best choice to make. Now, Carol Dweck is, as I mentioned, is a researcher. She's a world-leading researcher in personality, in social psychology, and developmental psychology, professor of psychology at Stanford University. And this book is all about mindsets. Now, what is a mindset? It's a simple belief about yourself, and it guides a large part of your life. It's asking the question, what do you believe about yourself? And it argues that much of your personality that you know and love, your story of who you are and your preferences and all those things, grows out of your mindset. And your mindset, therefore, may be preventing you from fulfilling your potential. So here's where I start to get curious. What more is possible is always what I'm asking. What more could I do? What more could I achieve? And what steps would I need to take to do that? And this mindset question becomes, how do we feel about experimenting, taking risks and failing? Are you discouraged by failure, or do you see it not as failure but as learning? Little kids, really, little children tend to, they're not embarrassed by failure in the same way as we become when we're adults. They don't see it as a bad thing to fail. They see it as playing, they see it as trying things. And that's an interesting outcome. Let's try this thing and see what happens if I do this. Or experimenting, a bit like being in a lab, let's try mixing different chemicals. Okay, that didn't work. What about a bit more of this chemical? So our attitudes to failure really shape how we approach life. And then your question of personality and intelligence. Do you see your personality, your intelligence, your IQ, do you see that as just who you are or something you can develop? Now, you may be interested to know that IQ, for example, can be developed. Your intelligence level can be developed. Obviously, everybody is at a different place on an IQ scale. Everybody has a different level of intelligence, but everybody can improve their level of intelligence. For example, not just my idea, but actually was said by Alfred Binet, who was the inventor of the IQ test. He said, with practice, with training, with method, you can improve your IQ. It's not a fixed thing. So, this starts to depart a bit from the narrative of the people who talk about winners and losers. You're either a bright person or a dumb person. You're either smart or you're stupid. We have different levels of IQ, all of us, and self-awareness is a really important thing. So knowing where we are on the scale really helps. But for all of us, it's improvable. what a difference that mindset makes to your outlook on life than a mindset that says, I'm just the way I am and I'm pretty stupid. It's going to really affect our action, isn't it? And whether we choose to do things. The differences between people are a mix of nature and nurture. For years and years, psychologists argue about was it mainly about genes? Are we just born the way we are and it's fixed? Or are we the way we are? Do we have the personalities we do because of the people we mix with and the people we've learned from and how we've been parented? Well, the answer is fairly well established now after all these years of research. It's a mix of the two. Your genes do have an impact. That's been shown by research. Where you come from, physically, biologically, has an impact on your personality and your IQ, for example. But so does your environment, so does the people you mix with and who you talk to and the extent to which you learn or not. So, even though there's a bit of us that's kind of fixed, there is a bit of us that is improvable, and that's important to understand. There's a great quote in the book, it's not always the people who start out the smartest who end up the smartest. And I'm sure we can all think of examples, and we've all heard those anecdotes of very famous, very bright people, or very famous people who have achieved a lot in the world, who were not the greatest at the outset. Popping into my mind immediately, for example, is Winston Churchill, who failed his school exams and went on to lead his country. And people have differing opinions about Winston Churchill, but as an example of how you are at school doesn't determine what will happen for the rest of your life, he's a great example, actually, of things can be improved. And I'm sure you have your own examples. Richard Branson is another example that comes to mind. I think not academically great, but great as an entrepreneur. And that's often the case with entrepreneurs, isn't it? That they're not necessarily fitting well into the academic system of certifications and exams, but their sort of maverick nature leads them to do great things. So there we are. So the two mindsets that Carol Dweck talks about in the book are the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. So let's have a look at the two. Remember, it's a choice. We can choose between these mindsets, and that's really important to grasp. Because if you don't grasp that, you won't choose. You won't choose anything other than the mindset you currently have, whichever of these two it is. The fixed mindset is, I believe my qualities are unchangeable. My intelligence level, my personality, my moral character is just, that's who I fundamentally am. The expression that's often used in the UK is a leopard can't change its spots. Is a way of saying that's just your nature. You will never change. That's a fixed mindset. Another expression we use in the UK, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So people like me who are getting on a bit in years can't learn anything new. Baloney. Baloney, to use the American expression. I don't agree with that for a moment. I'm learning a lot every day. More, actually, as time goes on. I think the foundation for learning, if you have an open mind, becomes greater and greater. The more you learn, the more you discover there is to learn. And it's wonderful. I mean, isn't that the journey of life, really? To be open, to be curious, to want to know more. That's what's taken all the great achievements of humanity. That's how we got there. Anyway, so a fixed mindset is believing these things cannot be changed. The strategy then of the fixed mindset is to try to look smart. Try to look like you're really intelligent, because you're never going to get any brighter. So put the best face on it you can. Wear the most intelligent mask you can. Try to look intelligent. Try to prove yourself in every available circumstance. Try to prove that you are bright. And it's a mindset that sees the world as divided into winners and losers. So for goodness sake, look like a winner. Be a winner. And of course, it's quite crushing for these people with this fixed mindset. It's quite crushing when they fail at something as they see it, because they feel like a loser and it doesn't fit the narrative. So that's the fixed mindset. The growth mindset, the second option, is I believe my qualities are a starting point for development. This is who I am, and I do have a personality, and I do, hopefully, and I do have some fundamentals and an IQ level. I don't think mine is that high, actually, in terms of IQ, but it's at a level. And but that's my starting point for development. That's my platform from which I can grow and I can adapt. Everyone can change and grow and adapt through application and experience. That's the growth mindset. A person's true potential is unknowable. A person's true potential is unknowable. Just grasp that for a moment. Our true potential is unknowable. There's no knowing what we might achieve. How exciting is that as a mindset? Remember, these are choices, it turns out. A fixed mindset, you can't change anything. A growth mindset, my potential is unknowable. It's who knows what might be possible. These are options we have for choosing what to believe about life. These are beliefs. The strategy for the growth mindset is a passion for learning, wanting to be stretched, wanting to see what's possible, an element of risk taking. Let's try something. Let's see whether we can. Let's see whether we can put a video on YouTube. Let's see whether anyone will watch it or whether they'll hate it. It's kind of risk-taking behavior, but it's a growth mindset. So those are the two options, fixed mindset and growth mindset. How does each of these mindsets then cope with failure, in inverted commas? So when we try something and it doesn't work. The fixed mindset kind of identifies with the failure. It labels itself. It says, I am the failure. I failed. I'm a loser. So the coping strategy for the fixed mindset is to avoid putting yourself in a situation where you might fail or you might lose. And it sees people who win as geniuses. These are people with innate genius. Now, maybe that's true of some people. But as we know, actually, most people who succeed in life and do great things, they work quite hard to get it. They may have an element of genius, but they also work quite hard. And if you look at any of the geniuses, pick any examples from Mozart to whoever, Einstein, you will find that, yeah, we might describe them as geniuses, but they really worked at their trade or their craft. They really put the hours in. They really did. So, but a fixed mindset believes people are just born to do that. They're just born geniuses. And therefore, I either can or can't do that. And minor setbacks for the fixed mindset become failures and can lead to paralysis. So it's really avoiding the possibility of failing, worrying about how you're going to be judged. The growth mindset, by contrast, copes with failures by seeing failures as clues, as indicators. Failures, or things not turning out the way I hoped, tell me something about how to succeed. What can I learn from this experience? What can I modify next time? Think of it as experimenting in a lab. In many ways, I've thought of this analogy in the past, in many ways our life experience on this planet is like a lab, or a playground. It's an opportunity to see what's possible. Try mixing different things and see what the outcome is. That's interesting, not what I hoped for. Let's try mixing it a different way. So the growth mindset sees these failures as clues, as indicators, as advice on how to succeed. Every time we try something and it doesn't work out the way we hoped, it's another bit of advice about how to succeed. How to improve. So the growth mindset is very persistent. The growth mindset is all about effort rather than genius. The fixed mindset believes people are just born to be geniuses. The growth mindset sees it as being about putting effort in to succeed. And the coping mechanism for the growth mindset is direct. Take action, take risks, confront challenges, get back on the horse. If you fall off the horse, get back on and have another try. And is very resilient and persistent. Everybody, whether you are predominantly growth mindset or fixed mindset, everybody has an emotional reaction when things don't turn out the way you hoped. Don't we? We do. I had a moment yesterday when something was not turning out the way I planned, and it was making me feel like, shall I just give up? Shall I stop? Am I wasting my time with this? Fortunately, I have a son who's very good at listening and takes it all when I'm talking to him, and then has the brilliant ability to offer a bit of sage advice or a thought, which puts me right back in the right place again. So we all have an emotional response to challenge. We all have an emotional response to frustration. Frustration is my goals are being blocked. I'm trying to achieve something and something is stopping me. That's the feeling of frustration. We all have those emotions. And that's our reaction. That's our emotional reaction to what's happened. But the interesting question is, what's then our response to what happened? So we can have the emotional reaction for 10 minutes or 30 minutes, however long it takes for us to calm down and get over it. But then what's our response to the latest data on whether something worked or not? And that's where we implement our fixed or our growth mindset in the response we choose. We either avoid the situation, pretend it didn't happen in the fixed mindset, or we see it as information leading to success and try something different in the growth mindset. So what all this boils down to is, in the view of Carol Dweck and the research that she's done, there are not two different varieties of human being. One created in the fixed factory and one created in the growth factory. That's not the way it is. These are beliefs about ourselves, and therefore they can be changed. Any belief can be changed. We change our beliefs all the time. We probably don't realise we're doing it in the light of evidence, in the light of something happening that totally changes the way we view the world. And you'll remember, I'm sure, the famous Henry Ford quote. Henry Ford, who started the Ford Motor Company and produced all those black Model T Fords that then became modern Ford cars. And famously he said, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're right. And isn't that saying we either have a fixed or a growth mindset? If you believe you can't, that's a fixed mindset. It's just the way I am. I'm just not bright enough. My IQ level isn't high enough. I can't do this thing. That's believing that you can't. And Henry Ford says, you're right. If you believe that, you can't. If you believe you can, the growth mindset, I really believe if someone else can do this and I'm bright enough to understand how they did it, I believe I could do the same things and achieve a very similar result. That's a growth mindset. And Henry Ford said, if you believe you can, well, you can. Now, we're not suggesting that everyone can do everything possible in the world. I'm never going to be a 100 metres Olympic gold medalist at sprinting, even if I really, really wanted to, which I don't. But even if I really, really wanted to, I think that's physically probably beyond my capabilities. So, not everything in the world is possible for every single person. We are different. We have different attributes. But I can certainly do things that an Olympic gold medalist can't. And so we start to go towards our strengths, and we start to think about what is unique and what is my strength on this planet. What do I have to offer that's different to the Olympic gold medalist, but hopefully equally valuable. So whether you believe you can or you can't is a mindset. It's a fixed or a growth mindset. And we're not always going to feel like we can achieve everything we want to achieve. The important point here, I think, is to understand that we're choosing our mindset. So we can, whenever we feel blocked, we can ask ourselves, am I thinking growth or am I thinking fixed? And if I'm thinking fixed, what do I need to change to get more into a growth mindset? For example, many people, when I'm coaching people, many people will say, I've tried everything, it's just not possible. Now, just think about that statement, I've tried everything. Nobody on this planet has ever tried everything. It is not physically possible for anybody to have tried everything. Isn't that true? So what we're actually saying, when we say I've tried everything and nothing works, what we're actually saying is I came up with about 3 or 4 things, and after those failed, I kind of gave up and felt like it was an impossible task. I didn't try the other 2 billion things that I might have tried. So whether we adopt a fixed or a growth mindset at that point is really pivotal to our progress. It really affects whether we go on and do something or we don't. Your mindset leads to thoughts and actions. Remember that your mindset is an unconscious thing. You don't know you're doing it. You don't know you're choosing fixed or growth mindset. Become conscious. Ask yourself the question regularly, maybe daily, am I operating in a fixed or a growth mindset? Because a growth mindset believes that qualities can be cultivated, and that will lead to different thoughts and actions. So how able are you? How capable are you? The research into this suggests that people are terrible at estimating their own abilities. But what it also suggests, as reported in Carroll's book, what it also suggests is that people with a fixed mindset are worse at estimating their own abilities. People with a growth mindset are much more accurate at assessing their own capabilities. Why would that be? Well, if you believe that things can be developed and if you believe that you have potential, you're open to accurate information about where are you now, where are you currently. You're open to hearing, if you like, criticism. You're open to feedback. I've been in training for a number of years now, and one of the things that was most difficult when I started and was learning to be a trainer and desperately wanting to be a world-class trainer, one of the most difficult things was to hear feedback from the people I was training. Because it wasn't difficult to hear the nice feedback that said I was wonderful. It was difficult to hear the feedback that said that session was kind of boring and I didn't get very much from it. But that's the gold feedback. This is what you learn after a while, is that's the gold. I need to hear that so that I can put that right for the next one and get much better feedback. So feedback in training is a very direct way of hearing what people think about you, which, you've got to steel yourself. You've got to take personal courage and grow a bit of self-confidence to say, yeah, I'm ready to hear it. But also after a while, what you find is you depersonalize it. You realize this isn't about whether I'm a good person or not. That's not what people are saying. They're talking about their experience in a training room or on a Zoom call. They're talking about how was their experience. And as a trainer, you need to care about the experience of the people you're training, or as a coach or as a teacher. So it's not to be taken personally. It's data, it's information about how I improve my training to get better results. And I'm using that as an example because the same is true of us as people, isn't it? Are we willing to hear feedback about us as people? Are we willing to hear about whether we're communicating well or not? Are we willing to hear about whether people perceive us to be good, loving people, or whether they perceive us to be people who don't engage or don't help? So the growth mindset looks for that data. It's inquisitive. It wants to know. It's curious. Tell me more. Tell me more. I can learn from this. I can change. So that would maybe account for why people with a growth mindset are much more accurate in their estimation of how capable they currently are than people in a fixed mindset who just have a story about it but don't want to hear the data. Exceptional individuals have a special talent for identifying their own strengths and weaknesses, so says the book. So grow this capability. This is a skill we need to learn. So you have a choice. Mindsets are just beliefs. They are beliefs in the mind and they are changeable. We have a choice whether to adopt fixed or growth mindset. The world is divided into two types of behaviours, not two types of people, two types of behaviours. The learners and the non-learners. And why is that? Because the non-learners see criticism as judgmental, they don't want to be evaluated, they have a fixed mindset. So they don't learn. Success comes from stretching and getting smarter and learning. It's not about avoiding mistakes. The reverse is true. You've got to make mistakes to get the data, to understand what you did wrong, to go to the next level. So the more easily you can embrace feedback and the ability to understand how you could have improved it, the more you're willing to embrace that, the faster you will learn and improve it, assuming you take action, of course, and modify your approach based on what you hear. So classically in school, if you don't know something but you're not willing to raise your hand and say, I don't know the answer to that, you're not going to learn the answer. You're not going to get smarter, are you? Some of the best people I've worked with in business at very senior level have been willing to stand up in a meeting and say, I don't understand what you guys are talking about. Can you please explain it in simple language for me? Chief executives of companies, I've seen them do this. There's a reason they're at the top. Not all of them, but for many of them, there's a reason they're at the top. They're open to learning and they absorb, they're like sponges. They absorb new knowledge, new information from the best people. So, but to do that, you've got to ask questions and you've got to display the fact you don't understand something. Conversely, I've seen people in business who have taken businesses in disastrous directions because they believe they know it all and they don't listen when people say, you know what, you're really heading in a bad direction here. And they think they know best. And they've ended up, well, destroying companies, some of them. In relationships, do we want a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? In a fixed mindset, you look at your partner and you say, my ideal partner would worship the ground I walk on. I want them to believe me to be God. Sounds nice, but how helpful is that really, and where does that lead to over a period of years when it turns out I'm not God? Could lead to disappointment, couldn't it? In a growth mindset, your ideal partner would challenge you, would encourage you to learn in a very loving and respectful way, would help you to work on any faults or things that you want to improve. In other words, they would help you develop. And isn't that what a great relationship is, actually? Isn't it about two people who want to develop in life, who want to get better, who want to improve, and therefore they're willing to share with one another information that would help on that journey? Takes a bit of skill and it takes a bit of practice to be able to communicate feedback to somebody in a loving and respectful way so that they don't feel upset by it too much. That is a skill, but it can be learned. And it's definitely a skill to want to hear it. People in a growth mindset thrive on challenge. So here's an interesting question. During the current coronavirus pandemic, are you retreating, defending? Are you hibernating? These would be things of avoidance, wouldn't they, that a fixed mindset was doing? Or are you thriving on the challenge? Are you seeing this as a time of growth? I know this is challenging for us. I know that it's difficult. And I know that we all have things that we'd prefer to be different to the way they are. But what mindset are you adopting? This is really fundamental to the way you're going to live your life in challenging circumstances. I encourage you to think about those areas of your life where you are adopting maybe a bit of a fixed mindset and ask yourself, what would happen if I were to adopt more of a growth mindset and see this as an opportunity to learn something about myself, about my family, about our situation, about the world, whatever, about my skill level, whatever it might be. Even if you believe intuitively that you're a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset, and don't we tend to tell ourselves the story that we're great people and actually if there are two categories, we're in the good category? Don't we tend to do that? I used to use this analogy in training, 80% of salespeople believe they're above average. 80% of salespeople believe they're above average. Can't be. Statistically, it can't be. And 95% of us believe we're good drivers, above average drivers. So who are the average drivers? Who are the bad drivers? Whoever they are, they're not admitting it. So there is a bit of self-awareness needed here and a need to look at research and a need to look at measures that say, objectively, where am I? Right? Are there any objective measures for this rather than just me feeling like I'm great? So there's a danger here that we all assume we're in a growth mindset because it sounds better. We have to be a little bit honest with ourselves here. So even if intuitively you believe you're in a growth mindset rather than fixed, ask yourself this, is that how you behave? Do you behave as though you're in a growth mindset? Do you have the self-awareness to notice your thoughts, your ideas, your beliefs? And work to embed a growth mindset, a belief that you can and will grow and develop. There's an interesting bit of research in the book about students and depression. Students with a fixed mindset, Carol Dweck worked with a bunch of students, recorded results, and these are results. Students with a fixed mindset had higher levels of depression, and their coping mechanism was to retreat, which again is to avoid. Students with a growth mindset also sometimes felt depressed, but they took more action to confront their problems. The more depressed they got, the more action they took. So their coping mechanism was determination to change something. Now, this for me really indicates the fundamental, profound nature of this point of fixed or growth mindset. If we're feeling a bit down and we're feeling like the world's just too much and we can't cope with it and there's nothing can be done, we are adopting a fixed mindset rather than a growth mindset. And we have the option to choose to adopt a growth mindset. And we only have that option if we know this point, that there are the two mindsets, and if we believe that there is a choice and we believe that it's growable. So this becomes a little bit circular. If you're absolutely determined that you are that the world is unchangeable, you are cemented in a fixed mindset. But most people can work on themselves and realize they have a choice and make a different choice. Even geniuses have to work hard to achieve. And the effort, putting in the effort, ignites the ability and turns it into accomplishment. So what do we need to do? Catch yourself acting in your mindset and switch behavior. If you want to be in a growth mindset, catch yourself acting in a fixed mindset and change your behavior. Become conscious, become self-aware of it. Like the feedback point. Get feedback, ask people what they think, what do they see when they observe you. Now here's a really important point as well. We are all a mix of fixed and growth mindset. We are all a mix. We have both. Okay? But are we spending more time in the growth mindset or more time in the fixed mindset? I too have moments where I think I'm really feeling stuck now and nothing, like the example I gave earlier, nothing seems to work. It all seems impossible. That's a feeling of fixed mindset. But being aware of this, we can turn it around and say, yeah, but hang on. That's just a mindset. Let's change it. Let's get into growth mindset and ask what can be done. What can I change? What can I do? What effort can I put in? Back in the 1960s, I mentioned him earlier, the psychiatrist Aaron Beck, a highly respected psychiatrist who did a lot of research, wrote some great books on this subject. He realized it was his clients' beliefs that caused their problems. Their beliefs, not who they are, but what they believe. And just before each of his clients had a wave of anxiety or depression, something quickly flashed through their minds. It was something like, I'm incompetent, or I can't cope, or this therapy will never work. And once he spotted it was the beliefs that were causing the wave of anxiety or depression, he started to help them work on their beliefs. It was the beliefs causing the negative feelings, the unconscious beliefs. They didn't realize they were having them. So, Aaron Beck found that he could teach people to pay attention and hear them, hear their beliefs, hear what they were saying. He got them to articulate what they were believing. And then he found he could teach them how to work with and change those beliefs. And that was the basis of cognitive therapy, which is incredibly effective. There's a gentleman called Richard Layard who's written a brilliant book called Thrive, which talks about the results that have been attained from cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, and it's unbelievable, absolutely fantastic. So all of which reinforces it's about the beliefs we hold. Our minds are providing a constant commentary on what's going on. It's like having a sports commentator in your head. You know, when you're watching a sports match and you have a commentator who's explaining exactly what's happening right now, we have that in our heads. It's explaining exactly what's happening in our lives right now. And the commentary is judgmental. It's saying this is a bad thing, this is a good thing. It's saying, there you are, I told you weren't capable. I don't know why you even tried that. I don't know. And often we hear the echoes of people from the past, from parenting or our peers or colleagues. We hear their voices in our heads telling us how incapable we are. So our minds quite often exaggerate and these beliefs and thoughts, and that's what produces anxiety, depression, and perhaps anger. So our mindset that we adopt is the frame for the commentary. If we adopt the fixed mindset, the frame for all this commentary that's going on is a judgmental frame. It's looking for judgment. It's looking for what's good, what's bad, what did we do badly. A growth frame is saying, what can I learn from this? How can I improve? So it's very different. And cognitive therapy teaches people to temper their extreme judgments and make them more reasonable. So if we're feeling really bad about ourselves, if we're being highly self-critical, one of the things we can do, for example, is we can look for evidence to back up that belief. What makes you say that? I gave an example earlier. I've tried everything. It's impossible. What makes you think you tried everything? Articulate for me what you have tried. How many things have you tried? Is it really everything possible that you tried? Or might there be something that you haven't tried? It starts to change the commentary a little bit, doesn't it? It starts to make it less extreme and more manageable. So that's what cognitive behavioural therapy does. And it looks for other possible explanations for the belief we've reached. So knowing about a growth mindset gives us an option. Knowing that there is such a thing as a growth mindset gives us the option to step into it and to say, I'm going to change what I'm believing here. Carol Dweck talks in her book about the journey to a growth mindset, and she's got 5 points. First one is accept that we all have both mindsets. You're not a fixed person, you're not a growth person, you're a person who sometimes is in growth and sometimes is in fixed. But where are you predominantly? Where are you spending most of your time? And is it where you prefer to be? So accept we have both mindsets. Second, learn what triggers your fixed mindset. Is it failures? Is it criticism? Is it your confidence level when somebody pokes you verbally and it attacks your confidence level in some way? What is it that triggers these responses in you? Learn what triggers them. That's very instructive. Third point, how do we feel and behave when these things are triggered? How do I feel about it? And then how do I behave? Do I retreat? Do I avoid? If so, that's very fixed mindset behaviour. Fourth, gradually learn to remain in the growth mindset despite the triggers. Manage the emotions a little bit and recognise this is not you, this is not who you are, this is just the human experience of experiencing emotions, wins, losses, setbacks, successes. Life is a rich mixture of all of those things. Life is not, I don't believe life is supposed to be perfect. We're not supposed to be here and nothing ever happen that we don't want to happen. Life is about how do we deal with some challenges? Who am I really? Who am I when I'm dealing with something difficult? That's what life is all about. And fifth point, help others on their journey too if you can. So if you observe somebody very much in a fixed mindset, start to have a bit of a conversation with them about fixed and growth mindsets in this great book you read by Carol Dweck, because it might well help them. Other thoughts from the book: set goals for growth. Set yourself some goals for growth. Each day presents you with ways to grow. As I was just saying, these challenges are opportunities for us to grow and learn how to deal with something that next time will be very much easier because I've learned how to deal with it. And each day remind yourself of the differences between the two mindsets. So however you remind yourself of things, with notes in your calendar, recurring notes in your electronic calendar, or sticky labels on your wardrobe door, however you do it, remind yourself each day that there's a fixed mindset and there's a growth mindset. And how might I be more in the growth mindset today? You'll find that life becomes a lot more fun. And you'll find that you become a lot more resilient and able to deal with those little challenges that life throws us, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. And we all need to be able to cope better with those. So I hope you enjoy it. If you haven't already read it, I thoroughly recommend it. Mindset by Carol Dweck. Great book and another life changer, I think. So thank you for listening. Please comment and please pass the link to friends and colleagues who might benefit from this. Thank you. All the best.